One of the most emotionally charged concerns people have after the center loosens is about care. Not whether life still functions, not whether decisions still happen, but whether care remains. People quietly wonder, if there's no central self anymore, will I still care about anyone? Will love fade? Will responsibility toward others weaken? Will everything become distant or cold? This episode is about care, not as a virtue, not as a moral stance, and not as an identity, but as a natural function that continues without obligation. Care is often misunderstood because it is deeply entangled with identity. From early on, care becomes something we associate with being a good person, a caring parent, a caring partner, a caring friend, a caring employee. Care becomes something we are, rather than something that happens. And once care becomes identity-based, obligation enters the picture. Obligation changes the texture of care. Care becomes heavy, conditional, sometimes resentful. It becomes something that must be maintained, proven, or justified. So when the center begins to fade, people worry that care will vanish with it. But what actually disappears is not care. What disappears is obligation. To see this clearly, it helps to look at how care actually arises. Care does not begin with a decision. It begins with contact. Someone is hurt. Something is vulnerable. A situation calls for response. Care appears immediately, before thought, before intention, before identity. The body responds. Attention moves. Action happens. This is care in its natural form. The center arrives afterward and says, I care. I should care. This matters to me. That narration is not the cause of care. It is commentary layered on top. When the center is present, care often becomes mixed with expectation. If I care, I should feel a certain way. If I care, I should act consistently. If I care, I should sacrifice. If I care, I should not get tired. These expectations turn care into obligation. And obligation is exhausting. Without a center, care still happens. But it is no longer filtered through identity. There is no story about being caring. There is just response. This makes care more honest, and often more sustainable. A common fear here is emotional flattening. People worry that without a center, emotions will dull, that love will become neutral, that relationships will lose intensity. But this misunderstands what the center actually does with emotion. The center does not generate emotion. It manages emotion. It amplifies some feelings, suppresses others, narrates meaning around them. Without the center, emotion is still present, often clearer, less distorted. Care without obligation does not mean indifference. It means responsiveness without pressure. It means showing up without needing to prove devotion. It means allowing care to fluctuate naturally instead of forcing consistency. This becomes very clear in long-term relationships. With a center, relationships often carry unspoken contracts. I should always feel this way. I should always respond like that. I should always prioritize this person in a certain way. When those expectations aren't met, guilt appears. Resentment appears. Without a center, relationships become more fluid. Care still exists, but it is not measured against an internal standard. Care without obligation allows for honesty. There is room to say no. There is room to feel tired. There is room for boundaries. And surprisingly, this often deepens trust rather than weakening it, because responses are real, not performed. Parenting is another place where this becomes obvious. Parents often confuse obligation with love. They believe that constant self-sacrifice is proof of care. But exhaustion does not equal devotion. Without a center, parenting does not stop. Care does not vanish. What changes is the pressure to be a certain kind of parent. Responses become more grounded. Limits become clearer. Care becomes more realistic. This does not mean neglect. It means care that respects limits, which is often healthier for everyone involved. Another fear arises around empathy. People ask, if there's no center, will I still feel for others? Empathy does not require identity. It requires sensitivity. When someone is in pain, the body responds. Attention moves toward distress. This happens automatically. In fact, empathy is often stronger without a center because there is less interference. When identity is involved, empathy can get blocked. The center compares, judges, protects itself. Without a center, there is less distance between contact and response. Care becomes immediate. Care without obligation also changes how helping works. With a center, helping can become transactional. I help because I am helpful. I help because I should. I help because this says something about me. This creates hidden expectations, gratitude, recognition, reciprocity. Without a center, helping becomes simpler. If help is needed and available, it happens. If not, it doesn't. No internal ledger, no resentment. This does not make someone passive. It makes helping cleaner, more appropriate, less draining. Another place this shows up is in conflict. With a center, conflict threatens identity. So care gets mixed with defensiveness. People argue to protect self-image rather than to resolve issues. Without a center, conflict is less personal, not because it doesn't matter, but because there is no identity to defend. This allows care to remain present even in disagreement. Care without obligation also allows grief. This is important. Without a center, loss still hurts. Sadness still arises. Love is still felt. What disappears is the added layer of meaning-making. The internal commentary about what the grief says about you. Grief becomes cleaner, more direct, still painful, but less tangled. Some people worry that this kind of care is colder, but coldness comes from withdrawal, not from lack of obligation. Care without obligation is warm because it is real. It is not forced. It is not performative. It is not maintained out of fear. A subtle but important shift happens here. Care becomes responsive rather than continuous. It rises when needed. It recedes when not. This allows energy to recover. It prevents burnout. It keeps care alive instead of exhausting it. A common trap at this stage is trying to become detached. People attempt to care less, to pull back, to avoid involvement. This creates another identity, the detached one. Care does not need to be reduced. It needs to be freed. The simplest orientation is this: let care arise when there is contact. Let it express itself without obligation. Let it end when the situation resolves. No one needs to manage it. If you notice care continuing without effort, without pressure, without identity, that is not emotional loss. It is care returning to its natural form. Care does not belong to anyone. It is not something you are. It is something that happens. And when the center is gone, care does not disappear. It becomes lighter, clearer, and more honest. In the next episode, we'll look at relationships more directly. Not relationships as roles or contracts, but how relationships function when there is no one inside trying to maintain them. Because this is another place where people expect collapse. And once again, something simpler remains.